Welcome to today's episode of Sparks by PRCA. This new series, hosted by the PRCA Equity and Inclusion Advisory Board, explores key issues across gender, age, LGBTQIA+, neurodiversity, and mental health. This episode will explore key topics around social mobility, inclusivity, and the cultural differences between agency and in-house PR roles. My name is Ed Tan. I am on the EIAB, working alongside many other great people on the social mobility stream. And I'm joined today by Koray and Amira, who will do a much better job of introducing themselves than I can. So please, Koray, if I can ask you to kind of kick us off.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Koray Camgoz. I'm the Chief Executive of the Taylor Bennet Foundation. I have spent around just over 15 years in the PR and communications industry. I've been at the foundation for just coming up to a year now. Prior to that, I was at Ketchum. I was a director in the corporate team, and previously I spent the majority of my career working with professional bodies such as the PRCA and the CIPR. Delighted to be here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Great, thanks so much, Koray. And Amira, please introduce yourself and what brings you here today.
Yes, so I'm Amira. I am the chair of the Taylor Bennet Foundation Alumni Advisory Board, which is a new initiative that's comprised of former program graduates who volunteer their time to help strengthen the alumni community and really help to strengthen the direction of the TBF programs moving forward. Outside of that, I, of course, work in PR. I'm an account director and I specialize in B2B tech, and I work at an agency called Missive.
Great, thank you so much both for your time and joining us today. So you're both clearly very linked to the Taylor Bennet Foundation. So it'd be really great to understand from both of you, I guess, what is the Taylor Bennet Foundation? Let's get the elevator pitch there first, and then understand from both of you, I guess, kind of the journey that the Taylor Bennet Foundation has brought you to this point today. So let's kick off with Koray, and then Amir will move on to you.
Yeah, sure. So the Taylor Bennet Foundation is a registered charity. So we were founded all the way back in 2008 by a lady named Dame Heather McGregor, who even back then was very conscious of the fact that the communications industry did not reflect society at large. And so the foundation very simply exists to increase the number of Black, Asian, and ethnically diverse professionals working in the industry. So we run a range of professional development programs, internship programs, mentoring, reverse mentoring. It's a wide range of programs and services that we offer both candidates and employers, but they're all geared towards increasing diversity in communications.
Great, and thanks, Koray. I think, the Taylor Bennet Foundation is doing fantastic work. I'm kind of amongst the BAME communities and the comms industry. Where do we see, I guess, to link it back into the overall themes around social mobility and inclusivity? Where do we see, I guess, the Taylor Bennet Foundation and I guess the intersectionality around ethnic inclusion and diversity as well as social mobility, just to kind of bring that point here to the forefront of the
Yeah,
conversation?
absolutely. It's a good point because obviously I mentioned that the charity was founded with this specific mission, but so much of the work that we do is about ensuring that the opportunities that are created are afforded to those who need them the most. So we do a lot of work across all of our programs to track social mobility metrics. We look at things like educational status. So, for example, over the past 5 years, 82% of all of our trainees are state educated. They tend to be among the first in their family's generation to have attended university. 67% say that. And they also overwhelmingly come from lower economic households as well. So we assess household income as well. So in addition to always keeping in mind the fact that we're here to increase ethnic diversity, social mobility is something that we pay very close attention to.
Absolutely, yes. I think it's hard in this kind of modern world now to ignore other areas and other things that can intersect with all these issues that we are dealing with, and it's an increasingly complex set of issues that we're all trying to tackle at the same time. So thank you for that, Koray. Amira, so tell us a bit more about, I guess, your journey into the Taylor Bennet Foundation, how you came across it, what did you specifically do originally through it, and then now, obviously, coming back to, support it in a very different way, which is really great to see.
Yes, absolutely. So when I was at university, I actually didn't really know what PR was. And actually, when I did the program, a lot of the conversations I had was I didn't really know about PR. I kind of just fell into PR, and I feel like that feels true for me. But I remember coming to my final year of university and realizing that I didn't have a job to go to at the end of it. So I very much panic applied to lots of different roles, got many rejections, and ended up applying to Taylor Bennet Foundation. And at the same time, when I did the program in 2018, I believe that's when Summer Stars was also launched. So I applied to both, not knowing I had applied to both, and got onto both, and then had the decision of which one do I pick. So I ended up doing the traineeship program in 2018 with Brunswick, and that was a real kind of crash course on what PR was, what types of PR that you can do, and really kind of exposed me to this world that I had never kind of witnessed when I was at university. So yeah, that's how I kind of found my way into the industry.
It's great. And do you know what PR is now, Amira? I'm still confused sometimes myself. So I think yeah, and that's great. So that experience itself. Let's dig a bit into that. I think before we cover then you return in fantastic fashion actually, because it'd just be really interesting to hear about the experience you got at Brunswick you mentioned, and kind of how that sets you up for success in this industry following.
Yeah, so a lot of the work there is obviously focused on corporate comms. So I learned a lot about kind of working with national journalists, working with FTSE listed businesses. And then after that, my first agency was actually going to Ketchum, and I worked in the consumer team because of a lot of the things that I consumed outside of work was work with influencers at the time. So I wanted to get exposure to how all of that works. So whilst I worked at Ketchum, I actually had a really good time because I was able to go to Lisbon for an event that we did. I worked in some really like famous UK British brands. And then because of the Taylor Bennet Foundation, I was exposed to the world of B2B tech PR, which is where I work now. And I then moved to an agency called Harvard, and now to where I work at an agency called Missive.
Brilliant. I'd really like to actually just touch on the influencer work because especially bringing, I guess, all of these issues around social mobility and race and ethnicity into, making it as diverse and mixed as possible. Obviously, the influencer world is something that over time has become more diverse, but maybe when you were working on it back then wasn't so much. So it'd be really interesting. I would love to hear like kind of your thoughts around diversity in the influencer world in the kind of the context of, I guess, social mobility and that kind of inclusion aspect.
Yeah, so I'd say influencer work at the time was very focused on the big YouTubers and Instagram. Those were kind of the main platforms that we hadn't experienced TikTok just yet. And I think a lot of influencer selection was down to what people generally consumed. So when your algorithm is designed with one kind of person or one type of identity coming through all the time, that is usually what was reflected back in proposals to clients. So I think when I came in and was looking at how do we get different voices into some of the campaigns that we were working on, I was thinking about the people that I consume, which looked a lot more like me. And ultimately, it comes down to what the client thinks is a better fit for the product or whatever it might be that we're focusing on. But there's definitely been a shift, I think, with the rise of TikTok in that because there are so many more people that we would consider influencers. We've got different backgrounds, different demographics, different socioeconomic backgrounds coming through, which I think is helping brands become a better reflection of the people that they are supporting.
Yeah, and that is incredible. I think it's one thing that I'm very like pleased about TikTok doing to the whole kind of social media industry is bringing that diversity that anyone could become overnight, become a huge influencer, which is always brilliant to see. So let's move slightly forwards now then to, I guess, you coming back to the Taylor Bennet Foundation with kind of the alumni role. Can you tell us a little bit more around what that role is and kind of what your role is moving forwards with that?
Yes, so as I mentioned, it's comprised of people that have done the program in the past, whether it be summer stars or traineeship. And we're largely there to kind of support the alumni community. So correct me if I'm wrong, Koray, but I think we've got like over 1,000 in the alumni community now. So that's a lot of people, a lot of talent, and we're keen to bring them all together. I think now there's no more important time than now to have an additional network of people that you can lean on and go to for support. So that will kind of be our main focus in making sure that we're running events to get people together or providing other smaller initiatives to help people progress in their careers, no matter what stage they are at.
Yeah, I think you've summarized it perfectly, Amira. And I think one of the things that struck me when I joined the foundation, and I was having so many conversations with alumni and people that had taken part in various programs, and there was such a strong sense of loyalty and admiration towards the foundation. And I was really keen for us to kind of strengthen connections between alumni. And as Amira said, we've now got over 1,200 people who've done Taylor Bennet Foundation programs. And I think this initiative, which Amira is spearheading, is it's a really exciting opportunity for us to strengthen those connections and to build community. Because if you look at what is happening in the world around us at the moment, I feel like there's never been a more urgent need for people to draw support and to connect with their peers and to strengthen communities. So I'm really excited about the Alumni Advisory Board, and I'm delighted that Amira's agreed to chair it because yeah, I think it has a huge potential for us.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible story, and what the alumni board are doing is fantastic. Quite, I would love to pick your brains a little bit and understand from your perspective and context a little bit more than I guess around the industry, and kind of you just touched on, I guess, it's a difficult time out there for people for many different reasons. Around the topic of social mobility and inclusivity, I would love to understand from your position, being able to talk to so many different, agencies in-house, kind of the perspective and the things that you're hearing currently right now.
Yeah, I think it's been a difficult period for a number of reasons. I think first and foremost, the industry at the moment, in the broad sense, is having a tough time economically. I think there are significant economic pressures facing the industry. I think added to that, there's a lot of reconfiguring, certainly amongst larger agencies, in terms of the value that they offer, the shape of roles, and there's a lot of restructuring that's taking place. And sadly, that's taking place at a time, well, in the context of the fact that the industry has always lacked diversity. And being frank, there have always been quite sizable systemic barriers which prevent people from underrepresented backgrounds entering and succeeding in the long term. So this industry does not have a good track record when it comes to inclusion, even when you compare it against other corporate professions. So there are, systemic and historic challenges which have always been there, and I think some of those are being compounded by economic trends which we're seeing at the moment. But I think the basic stats are stark. I think 9 out of 10 communication professionals identify as white. That has remained largely unchanged despite shifts in conversation over the past few years. But I remember I was at the CIPR when I started my career, and we were doing researching on the state of the profession, and those stats were the same pretty much at the very start of my career, 15 years ago. So that has remained unchanged, and it's in stark contrast to where society is. I mean, you consider that the industry in the UK is overwhelmingly concentrated in London, where around half the population is from an ethnic minority. It's just clear that we are not keeping pace with the society that we need to serve, and that extends to beyond ethnicity as well. 28% of the communications workforce are privately educated, which is 3 times the national average. again, I think it's another indication of the fact that opportunity is so often afforded and provided to a smaller circle of society. And it's certainly not about shutting those voices out. It's not about denying those people an opportunity, but we do need to really work hard to create a level playing field so that everybody, irrespective of where you went to school or what accent you have or who your parents knew, has the opportunity to not just enter the industry, but really thrive in the long term. And a lot of the programs that we do traditionally have been focused on entry-level support, but increasingly now we are being really intentional about how we help employers be better and to do better. So yeah, we're very focused on both influencing culture as well as creating opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to ask you both a question that I haven't prepared you for. So I'm going to ask you, Koray, first, because you're probably in the hot seat right now. And I think you touched on this. Simply put, are things getting better?
That's a really interesting question. I think it depends on. I think it depends radically on the organization or even the sector that you're talking about. I think some organizations are doing really great work, and we're really proud to work with many of them who are kind of values aligned and driving real change, and that's reflected in the composition and the demographics of the organization throughout the organization at all levels. And being frank, others are not. I think what is happening in the world at the moment is, you cannot ignore it. At the turn of, I joined the Taylor Bennet Foundation in back end of September last year, and within 3 or 4 months or so, there'd been a radical transformation in terms of how inclusion and diversity is viewed in the workplace. And of course, that came through executive orders and other influences in the US. But you cannot ignore that, because those conversations, they send signals to people internally and externally. And I think they've certainly been the source of frustration for a lot of those who are working to create equal opportunities in the industry. But the one thing I would say on that is that I think, on the whole, I haven't seen a massive climb down certainly not from the organizations that we work with in terms of their commitments to prioritize inclusion. I'm not discounting the fact that that may be happening, but based on what we're seeing in the organizations we're working with, we haven't seen that. But I would, remind anybody listening that our starting position as an industry is not a good one. So we have an incredible amount of work to do to ensure that we continue to create opportunities and, crucially, address the barriers and the cultures which prevent people from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds getting ahead.
Absolutely. And I think it makes these sort of conversations and initiatives that we're all part of even more important to try and keep doing better. I think that's the only thing we can really try and drive forwards. Amira, would love to hear your thoughts as well from someone who's relatively newish to the industry and have obviously come through a program to support people from lower socioeconomic and minority backgrounds.
That's the question on everyone's mind, if it is actually getting better. I'd say yes and no. And I say that because it's getting better in pockets and in increments, but in some ways it's not. Height of George Floyd's murder, I think that's when we saw this real galvanization of a community wanting to support ethnically diverse people, especially. And DE&I and everything under that umbrella was kind of in fashion again. And I saw lots of recruitment firms pop up that were dedicated to hiring in that way. And then circling back to now and what's happening in the US and the impact that has here, it feels like we've definitely done a U-turn, and I would probably say even nepotism is back in fashion again. But I also think this time where people are challenging what D&I actually means, or like what actual progress looks like, I think we're getting rid of the surface level stuff and the things that people thought they should do because it looks good externally. And I think we're actually then going to see a progression towards more impactful and more intentional DE&I work. That is my hope and my optimistic outlook. But I do think there is a lot of ingrained biases that exist within people that they don't really know how to tackle themselves that can hamper people's progression. And I speak only from like an agency perspective because that's the experience I've had, but that can make it really challenging for people to navigate certain spaces when they are trying to move up.
I think that's a really good point. There was definitely examples of organizations that just leapt towards initiatives that they weren't considering properly and that weren't really well thought through, and I think part of that was due to the fact that there was a lot of money around at that time as well for the industry, and now that we're in a very different situation economically, all of those initiatives, as Amira just highlighted, that weren't well thought through, that weren't aligned with the core business objectives of what the organizations were trying to achieve, come under scrutiny. And I think that definitely was something which I would say happened over the last few years. I think the other thing which has definitely been, well, you asked about the difference between whether things have got better. One thing I think, if we're looking for positives, which I would highlight as something which is being a demonstrable improvement in terms of the experiences of people from diverse backgrounds, is the fact that there are so many incredible communities now. When I started out in the industry, diversity was barely mentioned on a kind of on the corporate agenda, and very rightly we will scrutinize how high up it's climbed, and we can share frustrations over the fact that it's not taken as seriously as it needs to be. But there are some incredible communities which have sprung up, particularly over the last few years, which provide amazing community support to people. I'm thinking of the Black Comms Network, Asian Comms Network, people like us, BME Pros. There's all these amazing organizations which have really galvanized and actually helped people really come together and find their place in this industry, and they didn't exist before. So I think if we're looking for positive, that's certainly something that I would point to.
Yeah, I would completely agree, and very specifically to shout out, I think the 93% Club, what they're doing, and like loads of different industries, not just kind of traditional kind of law and banking, etc. They're doing lots of incredible work to raise awareness around social mobility in lots of different areas and places. And I've been to a couple of their things, and really inspiring. People like us also, yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and just generally as well, the whole thing about budgets. I mean, in a previous life, I worked at a financial institution and nothing to do with comms and finance, and they just have money. They can just throw it at kind of the grad schemes and the internships and summer vacation things, and just bring in people from lots of different unis. Whereas, what's the chances of going to like a Russell Group university, careers fair, or even not even Russell Group? Sorry, like that's the worst example I could have given. Just any university and finding a PR agency or a comms agency doing a stall there to talk about this industry and what we do, which is a very nebulous thing to try and describe, regardless, to anyone who's new to it. Great. So I'm looking at right now a salary comparison from Hanson Search for 2025 on average, and the average account exec minimum salary can vary between different industries, but it's anywhere from 20,000 to 26. Now, the London living wage, just as a comparison here, is, I think, works out per annum at 27. So it's not even the fact that they haven't changed. I mean, realistically speaking, with inflation, they have declined, which is a really shocking kind of thing to consider, which really doesn't help, I guess, with the connotation of living in mummy and daddy's house in Clapham while you promote fashion brands or any brand in London, or kind of the political lot as well. So yeah, there is still so much to do. And I think some of the discussion today has been really revealing. So let's, I think, move into like more practical bits and pieces. Like what can we do to move forwards from here, and where are the practical bits and pieces? So, Koray, let's just move back to you. What are the steps that we think agencies or in-house can take to really create that more inclusive and accessible environment for people from all economic backgrounds?
Yeah, I think, what struck me from speaking with a lot of in-house and agency leaders over the past year in particular is that there is a lot of fear and anxiety when it comes to inclusion. And I think from our point of view, that there are really basic steps that you can take, irrespective of where you are. Everybody will be at a different point in their journey. But the first thing I would say is, start collecting data if you don't already. You need a really clear picture of the composition of your organization. Really interrogate the culture. So look at who's staying, who's being promoted, who's leaving the organization. What are they saying when they're leaving? Are there any trends that you can identify in terms of the groups of people who are falling into those categories? Exit interviews are such an incredibly important opportunity for an honest conversation. So absolutely start making the most of those. Surveys are very important as well as you build that picture, but also bear in mind that people aren't going to be willing to share absolutely everything on surveys. So I think they need to be part of a wider strategy that is designed to assess where your organization is in terms of its approach to inclusion. But don't rely on survey data alone. Even things like meetings, I think it's really important for senior leaders, especially, to sit in and just observe meetings, like very intentionally, and look at how meetings take place, like who's doing the speaking, who's influencing how decisions are made, and be really cognizant of any patterns that are developing. And I think all of that helps build a picture of where you are. There are more practical things like pay gaps. There's a really important pay gap study out with PR Week at the moment. Absolutely look at disclosing data on gender pay gap and ethnicity pay gaps. Obviously on gender, it's in law for organizations with more than 250 that they need to disclose those pay gaps. And we very much hope that's going to be replicated for ethnicity pay gaps as well. But get ahead of that. Don't wait for that legislation to come in. So those are a few things which I would say off the top of my head. And then of course, reach out to partners, speak for the Taylor Bennet Foundation, reach out to any other organizations that you think can help you understand where you are and where you need to be.
Let's leave this by slightly flipping, I guess, the perspective on this, for people who aren't in the industry already. So what would you say to someone who is looking to get into the world of PR and comms, and I think has a concern around kind of the socioeconomic background that they're from and the kind of diversity aspect of joining the industry right now? So yeah, what would you say to Amira, a younger you, or to a new graduate or new kind of university leaver who's looking for potentially a role in this industry? So Koray, we'll start with you and then we'll wrap up with Amira.
Yeah, I would say the challenges are clear for the industry, but my message to anyone thinking about a career in communications is always the same. I think it can offer an incredibly rewarding and fulfilling career. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're passionate about in life, whether it's fashion, gaming, sports, whatever it is, there's a communications angle to that. And I think once that penny drops, it can be really inspiring actually to watch somebody pursue a career and to start for all the blocks to start falling in line. So I would say, absolutely consider it. I would say be really cautious with applications. I think particularly firstly on, like, do your research in terms of the organizations that you want to work in, and the cultures within those organizations. The Taylor Bennet Foundation can be an incredibly important partner for you in that initial phase. And we've got lots of different programs which are aimed at entry-level candidates. So I would say absolutely it could offer an amazing career, but definitely reach out to the organizations, some of which I mentioned earlier, that can help guide you in those initial steps. But probably Amira would probably be a better place to share advice on that.
I was thinking about younger me, and I remember when I first started in PR and I saw all of my AMs and account directors, they were going on 3, 4 holidays a year, buying lunch out every day. And I thought that is going to be me when I get to that level. And then, of course, thanks to inflation, that's not quite right. So maybe I wouldn't compare my start to somebody else's middle, but I would say because when most typically in agency, you're not in the office 5 days a week. So I don't think you actually need to spread yourself thin financially as you maybe would have had to in the past. So I would have I would have allocated certain budget to make sure I could be a part of those opportunities because that's what I wanted to do. But I think you can be really intentional now with the social stuffs that you want to join in with, and you can also pivot them. So if someone wants to go out for a coffee, you could suggest doing it virtually for that day. And I think that's definitely considered quote unquote fine in the world of work. I think a lot of people are also in the same boat. So be honest about it. Like I remember at times when I would be setting up dinners with friends or things like that, we would be very vocal, like, oh, we know it's towards the end of the month and we haven't been paid yet, so let's do something that's a little bit cheaper. And I think having that, being able to do that within your whatever group of people that you're working with you have is really important. And I would say ask about it in the interview. It's often those questions can really stump people, and that's when you can really start to get under the skin of like if there is actually genuine support or if it's all surface level. So those would be my top 3 things.
Great. I love that last one, Amira. Don't be afraid to challenge your interviewer. It is always a two-way street, and if it's not right for you, you will be very immediately clear on it. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time today. That is Koray from the Taylor Bennet Foundation and Amira, you're at Missives right now. Sorry, was it? Yeah, great. Thank you. And to all of the people listening, thank you all. I mean, this isn't an issue that we can solve individually. It is something we have to tackle as a group, as an industry altogether. So if you do have any more questions, thoughts, or feedback, please do reach out to the PRCA, to one of us on LinkedIn. You can find us all there, and let's keep this conversation going. But thank you very much for tuning in today.